William is one of our senior engineers here, and today we're walking through Leafy Bank, a GenAI-powered investment portfolio demo, which William built to reflect real-world financial services use cases. And it really isn't just about the tech, but it's about showing how the right database choice shapes your ability to innovate over the next 1, 3, 5 years and beyond. And Mongo sits right in the middle of the GenAI stack. It's your operational database and vector database in one. It bridges structured and unstructured data like portfolio positions, market news, and economic indicators. And it eliminates the need for bolt-on search engines, time series tools, or vector databases. This means it's less complexity, faster development, and fewer points of failure for the firm to adopt. In this demo, what you'll see is how we ingest portfolio data, macroeconomic trends, and real-time financial news. AI agents analyze this data, apply sentiment and volatility models, and generate personalized investment insights right inside MongoDB. And I think it is super interesting. You can ask it questions like, why should I, or what should I do with my REIT if tariffs on China spike? And it'll respond using vector search, live data, and reasoning powered by financial domain models that William will demonstrate. But let's be honest, if you try to build this on Postgres, you're going to end up duct taping on a search engine, a vector database, and ironically enough, a document database. Each new feature adds risk, it adds costs, it adds technical debt. While Mongo is cloud native by design, that means no extra layers, no brittle architecture, one stack, one engine built for whatever is to come next. Other databases like your key value store might be really fast under perfect conditions, but you got to run it on a track. You need specialized teams. And this isn't really very practical. Whereas Mongo's built for rapid iteration, developer accessibility, elastic cloud native scale, and these features don't require assembling a tool chain every time the business pivots. If your platform needs to adapt, which these investment firms need, they also need it to be flexible and to scale across teams and workloads. That means MongoDB can keep up.
Okay, here is our example Leafy Bank that we built to showcase some of these capabilities that Shane mentioned. What I'd like to do is take you through what we built, showcase the functionality, show the amazing stuff that you can do with the MongoDB platform and some of our AI integrations. And then once we've ran through the functionality, we can do a brief technical deep dive on what's going on behind the scenes. So Shane mentioned here, there's a number of different data sources that we are bringing in. First and foremost, you can see an example investment portfolio. So we have the symbol, we have the asset type, whether it's bonds, commodities, equities. We have the close price, the allocation. We have some indicators here on the right-hand side that we'll come to shortly. But the close prices here, they're refreshed using the data loaders from the capital markets that will go into more detail on the deep dive. We can see historic portfolio performance that the agents are calculating. We have the asset distribution by symbol, by type. And we can see here these macroeconomic indicators that Shay mentioned. So we have gross domestic product, we have unemployment rate, and we have the federal funds rate. And these are refreshed again using those capital markets data loaders there. In addition to the economic indicators and the latest ticker prices, we also load in financial news. And as Shay mentioned, we use the Voyage Finance 2 model to do real-time embedding generation. And that model is trained to understand financial data sets. And we get a higher quality of embedding that's going to help when we do our relevancy-based searching. Now, looking down at the portfolio here, if we take one of these equities, so SPY, for example, we can see the indicators here. We have the VIX sensitivity. So how exposed is this to fluctuations in the volatility index? We have gross domestic product, how exposed are we to changes there? And similarly to interest rate and unemployment. Now we can go a little bit deeper and look at some of the intelligence here. So primarily here, we have a candlestick chart here based on the last 7 days. We can look at the last 6 months and go further back and recalculate that. What this leverages is MongoDB's time series capabilities to rapidly do calculations on a dimension that is changing on a temporal basis. So as this changes over time, we have special operators in the aggregation pipeline to help produce those calculations. Looking through on the Insights tab, we see a number of different insights here. So we have the 50-day moving average. We have the sensitivity to the volatility index, sensitivity to interest rate, GDP, and unemployment rate. And what we can see here is there's a level of trend analysis here. So we can see that the VIX has changed here. That's an uptrend. And we get an asset-specific recommendation. So it's saying here that SPY shows positive momentum with stable volatility. So that's favorable conditions. Whereas, for example, over at the GDP analysis, the suggestion here is that you might want to increase your equity assets due to rising GDP, as that's an indicator of economic growth. And these suggestions are generated in real time by the agents. Combines current market pricing, your portfolio, your weighting, and whatever financial news have been loaded in that day based on market changes. And we can regenerate that news on a regular cadence. It could be daily, it could be hourly, or we can go out and get real-time, up-to-the-minute news by searching the web through our chatbot, as we'll look at shortly. Some of the other functionality here is, oops, my apologies, going to the news headlines here. So these have been loaded through the financial news data loader. For VNQ, or real estate ETF, we can see some news headlines specific to VNQ and to REITs. And what we can see here is the sentiment score calculated using Finbert, a pre-trained NLP model. We either get a positive, a neutral, or a negative sentiment. And in terms of how this works, we can see here we generate a semantic query embedding. In this case, here's what we're passing in: financial news articles related to VNQ, which is our real estate ETF. Again, we leverage Voyage Finance too. And we can see an example here of the vector search that we build. And this is combined into the platform. It's part of our Atlas Search product. It's a core part of the MongoDB Atlas platform. And what you don't have to do here is leverage an external vector search database. There's no bolt-on solution here. It's all part of the same platform. So there's no ETL process that you have to deploy and maintain and own there. You don't have to worry about keeping the data in sync, and you don't have to learn another query language here. If you know how to write a MongoDB aggregation, you already know how to use our vector search here. And with our combination with Voyage Finance 2 and our acquisition of Voyage AI, we have the automated generation of embeddings as well to make this as simple and as straightforward to use for developers as possible. Looking a little bit beyond, we can see how we leverage specifically the document model here and how we progress from raw ingest from the capital market data loaders to what you're seeing in front of you here. So for example, we're doing the raw ingest of the market data here. So open, close, high, low, and volume. We can see some of that raw financial news that we're pulling in from different sources. And of course, those macroeconomic indicators that we're loading as well through the data loaders. At the end of the pipeline, we can see the process reports. So we have two AI agents here, a market analysis agent and a market news agent. And I can see here that we're generating a market analysis report based on these economic indicators specific to the assets that are in your portfolio. And I can see that we're getting indications. Is this good for you? Is it bad for you? If you wanted to make changes, what type of changes might you want to consider based on changes in the current economic situation? And again, going down, looking at the market news report, we can see what is the sentiment. So taking in the financial news, doing an analysis there for each of your assets, and what is the current sentiment towards those assets, and is it positive or negative there?
So
So
William, I'm trying to understand, like, where does Mongo sit in this architecture? Is it just storing the data, or is it doing more than that?
it's doing more than that. So what we're showcasing here is the ability to combine both structured and unstructured data in a variety of formats. So it's multimodal data here. So we do have just raw documents that we're pulling in. We have time series data. I have a variety of financial news that's coming in as well. What we're doing here at Mongo is giving an ability to combine those data sets into the one platform. So we're storing these as flexible documents, and we're leveraging that schema flexibility to bring in a number of different data sources. And the great thing here is this is extensible. Say, for example, I wanted to bring in analysis. If you had in-house analysts that were publishing data, or a number of third-party financial analysis sources that you wanted to bring in, we could do that pretty easily without having to evolve a rigid schema. We could generate a new data loader for that, deploy it, load in the data, and very rapidly adjust our agent to consume that new data source, consume the embeddings, without having to deploy yet another ETL pipeline, yet another bolt-on solution, yet another thing for overworked and stressed developer teams to have to worry about on a short time frame. So we're giving you flexibility. And again, all this is part of the one platform. You have the flexibility of the document model. You have the built-in token search and vector search. You have the ability to leverage your choice of models. In this case, it is Voyage Finance 2, but you can use other models here. And you have the built-in vector search and that common query language. With other solutions that are bolt-on, maybe there's a specific query language that you have to leverage there, or another API that you have to spend time, learning and playing around with and getting up to grips with. In this case, if you already know how to use MongoDB and how to write aggregation pipelines, you can use vector search instantly. It's the exact same syntax, and it's native to your development architecture through our driver framework. So these are native objects in Java or JavaScript or Golang, for example.
So it's really like twofold, right? It's the document model that has been part of MongoDB forever, since we were 10 gen, right? And that's
That's
something that's
correct, yeah.
been banging around for decades. And then there's the developer data platform. The document model itself has a flexible schema design, certainly more flexible than these relational databases that was built back in the day, way before the cloud, and more flexible than these key value stores that we're seeing come up that could be also, or are still categorized as NoSQL, but not as flexible as a document model. So it's the flexible schema design in combination with the developer data platform, which brings in vector search and full text search, so that it's all inherently in one location, in one platform. So you can simply turn on that capability when, and I guess should you all need this, but in the investment world, we suspect this Gen AI wave, as you're showing here, is going to be massively important for all customers that really want to compete against these cloud native companies.
That's right. And one thing I wanted to also touch on, Shay, before we look at how we built this and what goes on behind the scenes, is that ability to bring in up-to-the-date market information. So, for example, this is the chatbot for the Leafy Portfolio Assistant. As you can see, it's got long-term memory. So again, we're leveraging the MongoDB backend to store the conversation history. So it has context of what has been asked before. And the great thing about having a data platform like MongoDB is you could bring in other data sources that are aware of the user. So in addition to having the context from the conversation here and past conversations, you could do a hybrid query to bring in, for example, past interactions from the contact center. So if the user has called up before with queries or problems, you can bring that in and you have that injected into the prompt to provide additional context here. But for the purposes of the demo, I'm going to go with the suggested question here. So based on market conditions today, what overall portfolio asset reallocation would you suggest? And we can see the agent was going on for some thinking there. And it's going to give us some suggestions here based on the market analysis report and what is in our portfolio here. So we have suggestions on current exposure to equities, based on uptrend in the SP 500, the NASDAQ, and so on. Say we might want to consider reducing allocation to long-term bonds and precious metals. Keep an eye on fixed income, where your flight to capital safety may be. We might want to diversify further. But the important thing to notice here is that we're calling out to one of these tools. And this is the market analysis reports vector search tool. You can see we're passing in the query portfolio asset reallocation. And what we're doing here is doing a real-time vector search against those market analysis reports that are stored on the system and the vector embeddings contained in that document structure. And what these tools allow you to do, the agent has access to other tools, for example, to do live web queries. If you're asking it something going beyond what it has an ability to immediately solve based on the vector search there, it can go out to the web, pull in live information, and then reason about that information and give you an understanding as to what that means for your portfolio based on current market trends.
Mm. No, that's really cool. It actually makes me think about how I have to interact every morning where I'm looking at Market Open and I have ChatGPT going, and then I have all the different ways that I try to understand what I could potentially be doing with my portfolio. Um, it makes me wonder, like, how does Mongo actually power these kind of recommendations? Like, what's stored in the database that makes this like work?
Yeah, we can take a look behind the scenes. So what we can see here, just to give a brief overview here, is in general, this is familiar to most people, but how we augment a large language model with proprietary data as a process called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. And the pattern here is how you go from a no context prompt, where you're just going to a large language model, and how with RAG you can access proprietary data from your internal systems. So that could be metadata, it could be audio files. You mentioned the contact center, for example. It could be internal customer PDFs. It could be images. Any data sources across your organization, you can bring in here, make that searchable, and pass that into the prompt to pass in additional context that's specific to your customers, your business scenarios, so the LLM can give you a specific, well-informed answer. And the important thing with MongoDB here is that we can provide a data model designed for multimodal data, including vectors. That's how our vector search works. But we can do time series, we can do rich text, we can do geospatial. Any sort of data source that you want to integrate, we can bring that in and make that available for vector search, for traditional token search, or for hybrid search as well. Pass that additional context to a large language model and give tailored answers for your customers and your customers' data. So let's take a look at how we loaded the data in. As you mentioned before, there's a number of data loaders that we use for capital markets and market information here. So in this case, we're loading data from Yahoo Finance. We're loading from Fred, economic data from the Federal Reserve. That's where we get those macroeconomic indicators, GDP, unemployment rate, and so on. We have a web scraper to pull in financial news. And we have a portfolio performance algorithm that can pull in stock ticker information that understands how your portfolio is performing. And we can see here, based on the diagram here, we're loading in that data, and we're using Voyage AI. You mentioned Voyage Finance 2 as the model to generate those embeddings, and then we're storing them in a number of collections within MongoDB. So these are all different types of data, whether it's time series data, whether it's text, whether it's flat JSON. We're storing these various different types of multimodal data in the one data platform, something that's hard to do, perhaps in relational systems where you have a rigid schema there. Looking towards the agents, so we mentioned those two agents here, the market analysis agent and the market news agent. And there's a number of tools that they have available to them to perform data retrieval, to perform vector search, and to call out MongoDB aggregations, all core parts of the platform. And they generate a number of different reports based on those news. There's a market analysis report and a market news report. And again, they leverage Voyage Finance 2 as the underlying embedding model, since that is trained on and specific to financial information. The key features here, we have the automated intelligence. We're doing daily schedule analysis of market trends and financial news. We're generating those portfolio-specific insights that we saw in the demo based on your current allocation. We're doing AI-powered sentiment analysis of that financial news and what its impact might be on your portfolio. And then we're powering all this through vector search, where we have that semantic understanding of financial news, going just beyond the simple keyword matching that you get with query or token lexical search. I mentioned there were a number of different workflows that the agents have access to. So there's the portfolio allocation tool to retrieve that current composition from MongoDB. We have the asset trends tool to analyze price movements. We have the macroeconomic indicators tool to evaluate the metrics. The market volatility tool assesses risk based on the volatility index. We've got a portfolio overall analysis tool to generate recommendations by passing the analysis through an LLM. We have the asset news tool, which leverages our vector search to find relevant financial news for each asset, and the asset news summary tool performs sentiment analysis on the financial news, calculates those sentiment scores, and then generates concise summaries using the Anthropic LLM made available to us through Bedrock.
Hmm.
And then see here a brief overview of the chatbot architecture here. So we have that market assistant agent built using the React pattern to reason and act, where it ideates on the question. It calls a number of those workflow tools that we mentioned, and they're extensible. Like I said during the demo, if you have, say, third-party or in-house analysts that you want to integrate their data, you could build a tool, make it available to the agent, and it could leverage that as an additional data source during its ideation phase. What we're doing here, as we've mentioned, we're leveraging Anthropic Claude chat completions model that's hosted within AWS Bedrock for the purposes of the demo. And that's where we're getting those answers, and we're storing the conversation history within checkpoints in MongoDB, and that's how we retain the memory across interactions with the chatbot. And you can bring in other data sources there. This is context aware. It knows who's logged in. We said during the demo, if, for example, you wanted to bring in your contact center information, historical interactions, support cases from the customer, any recommendations from the customer's advisor, for example, if they're working with a tied advisor, you can bring in their previous conversations there and pass in that context and make this better, smarter, more intelligent, and give better answers to customers, giving them a higher level of satisfaction and confidence that you're getting accurate information based on their data and their past interactions and with you, with your support staff, and with your support tools there.
So you're saying if like a firm has hundreds of apps running MongoDB, they could leverage something like this across like the entire firm then.
They certainly could, yeah. We have integrations, for example, through Kafka. We have Atlas Stream Processing to transform data in motion. So you could use our Kafka connector to pull in data from other parts of the enterprise, apply transformations, load that into MongoDB, and then at ingest time, you can go and get additional embeddings there. You can add them to your additional data model if you wanted to through that flexible schema. Instantly add that in there at additional context. Something that's pretty hard to do in the relational world, where you've got a rigid schema, where you have to take application downtime, you have to roll out schema updates, evolve it. These things are so much simpler to do with the document model and that schema flexibility.
Yeah, so you mentioned the relational world, right? We hear a lot of customers that are trying to get off of maybe some of the legacy relational to some of the new relational, but still at the core is the rigid schema design. And
Yeah.
Postgres would be, I guess, the new relational and the new legacy RDBMS. And if a firm were to build this on Postgres, like what part of this experience that you showed here would require additional systems?
Yeah, so the vector search would be a large one there. Most relational database systems will leverage an external vector database. I mean, there are integrations like PG Vector, but you're not getting that tightly integrated deployment that you get with MongoDB, where you have that one query pattern, and most importantly, that flexible schema. You're forcing vectors which come as an array into a relational data store. It's not the most natural way to store it. They come as arrays. You can store arrays natively as documents, and then you have the vector search and the automated embedding built into MongoDB, and you can pretty rapidly get something ready, put it into production without trying to fight your existing schema. And then, as we mentioned before, when you try and bring in other data sources from across the enterprise, or even unstructured data from outside the organization, that financial data that we mentioned, for example, that's going to be a real challenge to work out how to integrate that with your existing schema and then make that available, through one query pipeline. That's going to be a real challenge in the relational world.
Okay, so it comes back to the document model again, the flexible schema design, and then to the developer data platform with vector search built in.
That's
Really
right, Shay,
cool.
exactly.
Yeah, really cool leveraging Voyage AI here too. Can you talk a little bit about?
Absolutely right, Shay. The core here is the document model, the schema flexibility, and what we supply as part of the data platform, where that's the built-in vector search, where it's Atlas stream processing, the connectors, stuff where you don't have to go take bolt-on solutions and deploy and maintain additional ETL pipelines and learn additional query languages and additional query patterns. It's this all-in-one solution that we've built here, and we're certainly excited to talk more about this and kind of hear what this might mean from customers. And we'd love to take them through this demo again and take a deeper dive as to what this can mean for them.
Yeah, so what we want to focus on is the longer term vision for these financial services firms. So what are we trying to do, not just in a year, but 1, 3, 5 years out? And history repeats itself in technology. We see this with the decision between lift and shift and cloud native. And cloud native firms were able to move a lot faster than the individuals or the firms that just decided to lift and shift to the cloud to get to the cloud. It's not about getting to the next database, it's getting to the right database. And what we just saw isn't hypothetical, it's live production grade architecture built on MongoDB. And this is just one example of what's possible when your operational database isn't just storing data, but actively powering intelligence, personalization, real-time decisions. So a lot of firms are making bold moves towards cloud native architecture, and the next natural step is aligning your data layer to do the same strategy. And while some of these relational databases like a Postgres might feel familiar, and some of these key value store databases might feel fast, it's Mongo that is ultimately future-proof, flexible, and built to evolve with these investment firms. As we look to pull data across all lines, whether it's capital markets, digital platforms, client experiences, and beyond, you can be sure that Mongo is here to build together for companies that are looking not just 1 year out, but 3, 5, etc. And I think this demo is a glimpse into what's possible when you choose the right foundation.
That's right, Shay. And I think going even beyond that, these tools aren't going away. They're here to stay. They're getting better and better. This demo was built pretty quickly, but internally here at MongoDB. But these are the sort of tools that you need to be understanding. How can you deploy them? How can you get them out fast? How can you get that competitive advantage and move first into the market? We've got teams that are building these right now with customers. I would love to work with you too and understand how we can help get you out there and get you to market first.
Wonderful. Great job, William. Gold star all around. I was super jacked up when I first saw this demo. I think this is something that can be very powerful for investment firms. I used to work at JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley, and I
Yeah.
was a customer of an internal systems, and now I'm a customer externally for the likes of all the different investment firms out there. And I got to tell you, I tend to gravitate to the ones that do some of the more modern options like dollar cost averaging and automation. And a lot of these legacy firms don't have that. So our goal at
Yeah.
Mongo is to bring people, bring firms that have millions of customers to be really competitive against all these startups that are cloud native.